If you could do one DIY project in your kitchen, what would it be?
Hey, it's Becca. Welcome to my channel.
When we moved into our house 10 years ago, we loved our kitchen. It was a new build, loved the footprint, just wasn't quite my style. Let me show you. As you can see, we have dark cabinets, a dark backsplash, dark granite countertops, and a dark floor. And while all of those elements are beautiful on their own, when you put them together, naturally you get a dark kitchen, which can be so cozy and inviting. However, I just wanted to lighten and brighten it a bit. So naturally that meant painting all of our cabinets. And once I was done painting the cabinets, that led to lots of other DIY projects in here.
Such as adding this faux brick paneling to our backsplash. You can find the paneling at Lowe's or Home Depot. It usually comes with the bricks looking a bit red, although I think they offer them painted white now. Once I mounted it to our existing tile using Loctite, I then primed and painted using Bistro White. And then I added a bit of joint compound around every brick just to give them more of an authentic look. We took down a couple of cabinets and added open shelving in their place. We did that here and over here. Eventually, we said goodbye to the open soffit above our cabinets, closing them in with just good old wood and MDF, a little bit of trim. I like the custom look it gives our cabinets, makes them look taller, and I do not miss having to dust up there. We took down the microwave and added this wood vent hood in its place. We do have a functioning vent hood with a fan underneath. I just built the wood hood around it using regular wood and underlayment, although it may have been plywood. And for anybody who's curious, our microwave now hides in the cabinet to the right of the refrigerator. Now I know barn doors might not be as popular as they once were, but we still really like ours. This was a DIY project from a few years ago. I had originally stained the doors we made, but eventually painted them Sherwin-Williams Retreat. And then the once black hardware is now gold thanks to a little bit of rub and buff. I also built this super inexpensive wall rack or plate rack, mounted it to the side of the cabinet, used basic trim, 1x2s, although looking back, I wish I'd gone with 1x3s, just so my ledge space would be a little bit deeper. But you know, it's just a fun place to display your plates or chargers, etc.
And my latest project was painting the counters. I used epoxy to create a faux Calicut marble look, and they were bright and beautiful in the beginning. However, they yellowed pretty badly over time. So last year I painted over all of that using regular paint, even craft paint, and polyacrylic. And I am happy to say that they have held up really nicely. They have not yellowed one bit. In fact, a few of you have reached out just to see what they're looking like. So let me turn the camera around and show you.
You can see they have not yellowed one bit, thank goodness. And for anybody who's curious, we don't place hot plates or, a crock pot directly on the countertops. We'll put down a hot pad or even a cutting board first. You can also see by the reflection that thankfully they have maintained their shine as well.
And because I'm so pleased with how well they've held up, I'm going to paint another countertop today with your company, only this one is downstairs in our basement.
This piece is from IKEA. Well, the countertop is from IKEA, and hiding under the black paint is a faux butcher block look. That's how it came. Then I painted it black just to tie in with everything else I've done down here. But if we take a closer look, that's not dirt. That is just chips of paint from accessories I've had on here. I didn't allow the paint to cure enough, so it kind of held on to, pieces of paint that were on accessories that I had on there. So it's time for a little refresh. First thing you're going to do is sand. You can either sand it with one of these little blocks, or if you have an orbital sander, it's just personal preference. Since this isn't a very large piece, I'm just going to go ahead and use this
because it might be a little less messy and the dust might not go flying as bad as it would if I used the orbital sander. And the reason we're sanding first is because we want to knock off the glaze on this piece, smooth over any little bumps or ridges. Also, this will allow the primer to adhere to it properly. Here's what it looks like with a little bit of sanding. You can see it knocked some of the gloss off, roughed it up a little bit. Now, if you had a black countertop, it would be really pretty to do the reverse veining, do the white veining. I love that look. But I want to lighten and brighten this counter. So on to the next step. Are you going to let me do this project or not? Now I'm just wiping it all down with a wet rag just to get all of that sand off. And then once the countertop dries, you're going to want to add a coat of bonding primer. Now that the primer is dry, I'm going to take this 220 sand block and gently go over the surface, like as in barely touch it. Doing this just removes any bumps and gets it ready for your next coat of paint. Just make sure that after you do that, you wipe it down to get rid of any of that loose sanding. Next, I'm going in with my first coat of paint, which is Valspar Bistro White in Satin. Now that this coat has dried, I'm going to sand it one more time, again using a 220, and then add one more coat of paint. So I let all of that paint dry overnight, and now is the fun part. We're going to start adding lots of dimension, starting with these few products. I have a glaze, a craft paint, a little bit of water, and a sponge. Well, I totally thought I had hit record earlier. Apparently I had not, so I've already done one section. But what you do is you take your mixture there and then dip your sponge into it, and then offload some of that excess into another plate that's on standby. Take that away. And then you're just going to start pouncing little circles onto your countertop. It does not have to be perfect. This was a tutorial that I watched that Amy Howard did some time ago, and I just love her method. She calls this scumbling. But you want to make sure you work in small sections at a time because you need to work with this product while it's still wet. So once you've done that, then you're going to take a rag and you're just going to start pouncing, if you will. So you're just going to pounce and pull, pounce and pull, pounce and pull, pounce and pull. And what you're doing here is you're creating dimension. And this dimension will also serve as the perfect base for the veins that we'll add in a little bit.
Now that this part is done, I wanted to show you what it looks like. You can see all the dimension and how it's not all perfect. You know, you've got darker spots in one place, lighter in another, or hardly any in some. And to me, that just makes it, again, look more authentic, gives it lots of depth and character. And I've known people who will leave their counter just like this. They don't even add the veins. And I could do that, but I love adding the veins. I think it just takes it that one step further. So this is going to dry for just a little bit, and then we'll start adding in the veins. I'm going to take that same mixture I had of the paint, the glaze, and the water, and then I'm just going to roll a feather around in it, dab it off, and then we'll see what happens. Now the one thing I've learned is you want to start on the side or going at a 45-degree angle. You never want to create a vein that goes straight across or one that looks like a snake. That just won't look as authentic. So here goes nothing. You just kind of want to move your feather back and forth, back and forth. It's going to look worse before it gets better. I'm going to take this chip brush and just kind of blot a little bit. I really wanted to create one thick or thicker vein right here just for fun. So I'm just going to try to fill it in. And you know what? The best part about this is if you start one and you think, oh my gosh, that looks awful, you can easily fix it. I promise you. Now, because I'm eventually going to be painting the doors down there a beige, I thought it would be fun to just mix in a little bit of a soft brown into the veining as well, just to kind of tie it all together. Playing around with your veins, if you add any extra that you feel look just a little too harsh, you can always load your brush up with a little bit of white paint and glaze, maybe even some water, and then just kind of stamp them a little bit. That might help soften that vein. But I have another step after this, which is going to soften all of the veins. Now the next step is we are going to add a little bit of a glaze mixture right on top. So I have a couple of tablespoons of paint. This is the Bistro White, which is what I used as my first coat, well, after my primer on the countertop. Then I'm gonna take a couple of teaspoons of the glaze. This is the Valspar mixing glaze, clear. And I'm gonna add in a little bit of water. And then stir. You don't want a very thick consistency. You want a thinner one. And I'll be applying it with a foam roller. As you can see, I'm just rolling on the paint glaze mixture and then blotting it off. You can do that in small sections, but since this is not a very large countertop, I decided to just paint all the way down and then blot off the excess. Doing this also adds to the dimension and makes the countertop, especially the veining, look a bit more authentic. And then one little thing, if you see that you didn't carry a vein down on the side like you should have, if you have a tiny artist's brush, you can just start here and just roll your hand a little, or roll your fingers a little bit. We went ahead and moved the countertop back downstairs for this last step, which is adding polyacrylic. Well, I say last step. First thing I'm going to do is lightly sand it with the 220 just to rough the surface up a tad so that the polyacrylic will adhere a little bit better. Then I'm going to use a tack cloth just to go over this really gently to make sure I get all of the sanding up so none of it gets sealed in with the polyacrylic. And this is the polyacrylic that I'll be going with. It's a clear matte. This is just personal preference. It'll give it more of a honed look. You could use a satin, a high gloss, whatever you like. And I'm gonna use just a regular synthetic brush to apply it. I know some people use a foam roller. I have found that that causes bubbles, so my preference is a brush. You wanna gently stir your polyacrylic, being careful not to shake it. You don't wanna cause any bubbles. So again, you're just gently stirring, maybe for like 10 to 20 seconds. Now it's time to apply. I'm just gonna put my brush down. I know a lot of people will put this in a separate container. I'm just gonna use it straight out of the can, wiping off excess, and then I'm telling you, you just wanna add a very light coat, going in one direction, very gently, because if you don't, you run the risk of having bubbles. All right, just for fun, I'm gonna try a little experiment. I used this when I went with the epoxy. It helped dry the epoxy and eliminate any bubbles or streaking. I'm gonna see if this will work for the polyacrylic as well. Now, if you're gonna go with this method, just be sure you rock the dryer back and forth. Don't focus on one spot too long. Okay, just for fun, here's the before. And here is the after. I'm going to be lightening and brightening a little bit, taking some of the black elements away. Going to go with more of a beige. So now that I've got that beige in the foam marble countertop, hopefully it will all tie together. So hopefully, if this is a project that's been on your list, you will have seen how easy it is and you will do it as well. If you've got any questions, I am more than happy to answer. As always, thanks so much for hanging out with me. I really appreciate your company, and I will see you next time.